Hello and welcome to the Sportlight with Yvonne Mangunda. And as usual, we'll bring you a big sporting personality to talk about their journey, where they've been, where they are, and where they see themselves in the future. Today is no different because we are talking to a man who loves the game. And when I talk about the game, I'm talking about cricket. A cricket commentator, cricket analyst, cricket lover, cricket addict. You can call him all these things and it will fit. I am talking about the Dean du Plessis. How are you? Hi, Dean. How are you?
That's a very nice intro, Yvonne. I have to say, you're looking very resplendent today. Yep, even I can see that.
Thank you very much. And before we even get into the show, how do you like to be called? Because a lot of people think if you call a person blind, it's rude, or if you call them visually impaired.
Yeah.
Which term really works for?
For me, it's
Yes.
blind, because visually impaired, to me, what you're saying is it means that you still have some form of sight. Now, I don't have any sight at all, and I've never had any sight. I was born totally blind, and so therefore, in my opinion, the correct terminology for my situation is blind, because like I've just said, visually impaired, if there's an impairment, it means that something isn't working 100%, but it is still working, you know? So that's just my take on it, of course.
So at least I can feel comfortable throughout the show, because a lot of people might be like, why are you calling him blind? Blah, blah,
No,
blah.
it's blind is blind.
So were you born blind? Did it
Yes.
happen when, you were born blind?
Yeah, I was born with tumors behind both my retinas. So when I was still, or while I was still inside my mother, I was already blind, apparently. I don't know how these doctors knew it in those years, but when I was born, the retinas had been destroyed by 2 tumors. So I was only given 3 to 5 months to live. And I can tell you that if it is God's will, next year, January, I'll be reaching my half century. I'll be 50 years old next year, with a single down to third man to get to my 50. So certainly I've defied all those odds. And, still, to my knowledge, even though I've gained about 15 kgs maybe from when you first met me, I'm still stroking the ball to all corners of the ground.
So looking at your upbringing, where were you born? Where did you go to school? What was your childhood like?
I was born in Harare, but my parents and my grandparents, they were all born in Kadoma. And so in 1980, on the 30th of my third birthday, the 30th of January 1980, we moved down to Kadoma from Harare. And my dad went to go and run a family business because the owner of my uncle, he had passed away. So my dad went down to run the business. We were there for 13 years. So although I was born in Harare, I grew up in Kadoma, but I did my schooling at a school for the blind in a town called Worcester, which is situated probably about just over 100 k's out of Cape Town. Interesting fun fact, I started going to boarding school at the age of 3 years old, Yvonne. So mom and dad and older brother Gary were living in Kadoma, and I would then come to Harare, where I'd go to St. Giles, because that was prepping me for when I started going to boarding school in South Africa at the age of 6.
So would it be correct for me to say you were well up? Because if your parents could afford for you to go to school in Cape Town, it must mean financially they were solid.
Not at all. They went without a lot to ensure that I got the education that I needed. We did have maybe a little bit of help from family members now and then, but mom and dad actually went, and I would imagine my brother Gary as well, went without a lot to ensure that I got the education that they, because most parents obviously want the best for their children. And so they made a plan, as we in Zimbabwe like to say. I would prefer not to think about what they went without and what happened at home, and I'm grateful that I wasn't there to experience and to witness that.
And you talk about Gary, so does it mean, is it just the two of you? How many siblings do you have? And are you the first? Are you the last?
There were 2 of us. So my brother Gary was 3 years older than me, maybe 2.5, 3 years. He was August of 74. I was January 77. But in 2006, he passed away.
Oh.
Then we lost my dad in 2020, and then we lost my mom in 2023. So out of a family of 4, the one who was supposed to have passed away first, he's the one who's alive. So it's only me who's left now.
So now, when you talk about your immediate family, who do you talk about?
Well, that's a good question, I suppose. I have an aunt who's in Harare. She is my dad's older sister. So in terms of that family aspect, but then I suppose now my in-laws would have become my family. So my wife Louise and I, we live on the same premises and property as her parents, and I suppose now they would be classed as family. But I still have family in Kadoma, and then the rest of the family are all scattered around the world now.
And how did losing your family, like your parents, your brother, how did it affect you?
It was extremely, it was very hard, because certainly, every one of them had a very big part to play. So my brother taught me a lot about the game, having played, having captained Watershed College, and then having played at Alex. He played at Alex Sports Club for many, many years. Played a bit of cricket for Mashonaland and Mashonaland Country Districts. So he taught me a lot. And then when he passed away very, very suddenly, due to a car accident, and there were complications after the car accident. So he had the accident on the 3rd of February, and he passed away on the 25th of March, but he was supposed to have got married on the 29th of April of that year. And so, that was obviously a huge setback, to be perfectly honest with you, because my sort of, I suppose, my mentor, who taught me so much about the game, and so he was gone. So that was very difficult, and I would have very much have loved to have seen how, if he would have enjoyed the IPL as much as I dislike it.
You're a purist.
Yeah, I am a purist, and so is he. But I think he was a bit more open to stuff than I am. I initially started liking the IPL for the first 3 or 4 seasons, and then I just thought, no, you know what? It's nice to get takeaway food sometimes. Bubblegum loses its flavor, but at the end of the day, you go home and you have a nice roast beef. That's what it's all about. But yeah, so just to get back to what you were asking. So, and then when we lost my dad, I think, to be perfectly honest with you, although we knew that he was going to pass away because he was very ill, Dad was my number 1 supporter and my biggest fan. No, there will never ever be another person who will support me like my dad did. And so when he went, it was extremely difficult for me to deal with. I remember Sri Lanka were sort of just after his funeral. Sri Lanka were in Zimbabwe for 2 test matches, and I remember saying, I'm going to go back and get not necessarily into the commentary box, but into the media center, because that's what my dad would have wanted. But you know what? We often say this, use this as a cliche, Yvonne. We should never say that's what XYZ would have wanted when they pass away. You must say, I will go back when I'm ready to go back. Because I struggled with that particular series against Sri Lanka. My heart wasn't in it. I remember Sikandar Raza bowling beautifully. You remember he got those 7 wickets. You were stadium announcer. But my heart just was not in it. I can't even really tell you what happened. Kevin Kasusa, I know, got a very good half century, but that's about all that I can remember. I don't remember. And you know me, normally I remember all the stats
Yes.
of all the games.
And you talk about Gary, your father, the influence, but when was your first encounter with cricket? Was it an instant love, or it grew on you?
So I think I knew about the game when I was very young because of Gary playing it. But it didn't mean anything to me because I couldn't understand a single thing that they were talking about. Then what actually happened was, when I was at school in Cape Town, South Africa was then readmitted to the international scene after the apartheid and that. So their team went to India for 3 one-day internationals. And what was very nice about being there was that there was always ball-by-ball cricket commentary. So whether it was domestic cricket in those years, it was known as the Currie Cup, which obviously is synonymous with rugby in South Africa. which then became the Castle Cup, which then became the Super Sports Series, and so on. Anyway, it's South Africa's premier 4-day domestic tournament, and they had ball by ball, wall to wall radio commentary amongst or around all the venues.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, when I first started to take an interest was the third and final one-day international between South Africa and India. India batting first, making 287 for 5. Sachin Tendulkar and Navjot Sidhu scoring hundreds. South Africa chasing it down, 288 for 2, with Peter Kirsten and Adrian Caper and Kepler Wessels scoring runs. That got me interested. What got me completely hooked, though, was going to a game in Durban, and it was what was then known as Free State. So I think they're now known as the Knights, versus Natal, which are now the Dolphins. And so the Free State side had the likes of Alan Donald, Hansie Cronje, Mickey Arthur, and all of these names I'm sure everybody would have heard of, all the cricket lovers. Mickey Arthur, very successful coach. Alan Donald, fast bowler. Hansie Cronje, the captain. Franklin Stevenson, who was my all-time favorite international player. He was a West Indies player, but he was playing for Free State. He was a genuine all-rounder. And then there was Natal, who had Andrew Hudson, John T. Rhodes, a former Zimbabwean, Peter Rawson, and Rob Bentley, 2 old Zimbabweans. So, but Alan Donald just wiped everybody off the face of the earth in that particular spell. And then I knew that this is a game that I was going to love, And then, of course, not long after that, it was the 1992 World Cup. And again, there was radio commentary. And I think, Yvonne, that's what made it so beautiful, is that we had access not just to television commentary, but to radio commentary. And you know how special that is so the 92 World Cup was in Australasia. So the games in New Zealand would start at 11 o'clock in the evening, our time. So you fall asleep to games happening in New Zealand. And then the games in Australia, if it was a day-night game, it would start at 5 a.m. our time. Okay, if it was a day game, it was horrible. It would be a 2:30 start. So you can forget about that. But I think the privilege, and it is a privilege, of actually listening to radio commentary, that's what made me realize this is what I want to do. I also want to be saying, so here we have 3 slips, a gully, mid of mid-on, deep backward, square leg, fine leg, and I would then start to make up test matches between South Africa and Zimbabwe. So here's this Zimbabwean boy from Kadoma in amongst all these Afrikaners in South Africa, and I'm making up test matches of South Africa versus Zimbabwe, and South Africa would always be beaten by Zimbabwe, because that was the only way Zimbabwe were ever going to win a test match, was Dean du Plessis making one up,
But what do you hear? Because I think there was a time, I don't know if I'm correct, there was a time you used to say the sound could even tell you what sort of shot was it?
Yes, yeah, that's correct, yeah. So when I then started listening to TV commentary, the stump microphones, so just for the uninitiated, by the wickets, we don't just have cameras, we don't just have stump cameras, but we have microphones as well. So at the bowler's end, you have a microphone. So as the bowler lands with his feet at the crease and delivers the ball, you hear a combination of the bowler's foot going down on the crease, and then you'll sometimes hear him or her give a grunt as they bowl the ball. Then at the other end, at the batsman's end or batter's end, there are more microphones, so you'll hear as the bowler comes into bowl, you'll hear the batter at the crease going tap, 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 like that, waiting to receive. Then you'll hear the ball being released, and of course it's pretty self-explanatory. You can tell if it's a slower ball from the time when the ball leaves the bowler's hand to when it hits the bat, the pad, or the stumps. You can hear, because it takes a bit longer, so then you know that it's a slower ball. And a lot of bowlers have different grunts, have different ways that they drag their feet at the crease when they get to the crease. And of course, then in terms of the batting, when the batter plays a shot, if there's a bit of a sharper crack, then you know that the ball has been hit through the offside. When it's on the leg side, predominantly the ball has been flicked off the pads of the batter, so it's slightly more muffled. When a reverse sweep is being played, sometimes the ball hits the ground. Sorry, the bat hits the ground when the reverse sweep is being played. That was especially so with Andy Flower, and so that's pretty much how I do it. And I would imagine that there are many, many other blind people who are just as capable, if not more capable than me, but who just haven't been given the opportunities and the privileges that I have.
Do you think your sense of sound is heightened, or it's because us people who are not blind don't take time to listen to those sounds?
Yeah. I think that that's exactly what it is. You know, you have your eyesight, so you are relying on the visuals. I don't have the eyesight, so I have to rely on my hearing and my memory. And that is a big thing. It's not just about hearing, it's the memory as well. Don't forget that the commentators who sit in the commentary box, they have access to monitors, so they can see all sorts of stuff that will flash up on the screen. I can't do that. So my memory works overtime in remembering who did what and so on and so forth. I doubt very much you'll ever see me in the commentary box again because my hearing has deteriorated very badly. And so now I'm much happier doing podcasts. I actually have a podcast of my own, Dean at Stumps, and I'm much happier interviewing players or perhaps maybe hosting a show or hosting the cricket as we build up to the game. But to actually be in the commentary box now, I don't really think that would be a wise thing to do because of the fact that I've lost so much of my hearing. And although we have headsets and you can still listen to the stump mics, I don't think it would be a good thing.
And how emotionally, how has that affected you over the years as your hearing has deteriorated?
No, that's something that hasn't been very nice. I mean, you know, now I even struggle to identify people when they come and talk to me. If it's an allowed, so I do have hearing aids, but if we're in a loud area, these hearing aids do have settings that's supposed to make it a bit better. But what I find is that it just makes it louder, but it doesn't make it clearer. And also what I find is because there's so much hearing loss, all sorts of other weird things have happened, like my balance and orientation and mobility has been affected. So if I walk into a place, normally somebody would say, "Here I am, Dean, walk to me." And, you know, they just say, "Follow my voice." But now if you say to me, "Follow my voice," I can hear your voice, but I can't hear where it's coming from. I don't know if it's on my left or my right. So it's not just about being totally blind. It's now about being in a situation where you're not totally deaf yet, but you have lost a lot of your hearing. And with the hearing loss, you've lost huge amounts of your confidence because it's orientation and mobility, it's balance, and things like that, which has been affected as well.
Because I remember like meeting you early days and over the years, like I literally needed to just say hi.
Yeah.
And you would know.
Yeah. Or
like
even
it doesn't matter, we haven't seen each other for months.
That's
but the
correct.
moment I said hi, you were like, "Oh, Yvonne."
Yeah.
So now are you in that point where sometimes it'll probably take more time, or you might not even realize who the person is?
Yes, absolutely right. Those are the days, Yvonne, when we were still young and energetic, all of us.
And when you look at this process and your journey, have people been receptive always? What challenges have you faced along the way?
I think the challenges that I would have faced would be a scenario where people love to profile me, because they love to hear the story behind how this guy who dodged 2 brain tumors but is still scoring runs and how he's able to call a game of cricket. But that's as far as it goes. Nobody's been brave enough to actually employ me, and you know, on a full-time basis, that is to say, and say, "Right, Dean, so here's the story. We will treat you like any other commentator. If we like what you're doing, you are here to stay. If we don't like what you're doing, we will do with you just as we would do with any other commentator. We would say, thank you, but no thank you." And so I don't feel that any broadcaster in terms of commentary has actually given me that opportunity to really prove myself, you know. Now, if somebody were to do that, I'd be very clear and say, "Look, please, maybe not commentating, but I'm pretty sure I can hold my own with any other broadcaster in the business, that's for sure."
And all that knowledge then is put to waste because you literally have like you are to cricket what Charles Mabika is to football.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Charles Mabika is the CNN of football. Of that, there is no doubt. And I remember once actually calling him because I found out where he worked. So this was back in 1995. And I phoned him and I said, Mr. Mabika, my name is Dean du Plessis. And I am a huge, huge supporter of you and what you do. I listen to you every Sunday on the radio. And he said, hey, Dean, please don't take this personally, what I'm about to say to you. But I've never ever had a white fan phone me on the telephone and tell me. And we had such a good laugh, you know. And I said, well, so there's a first time for everything, you know. And I was only about 18 years old at the time. And I just loved the, you know, we had such a good laugh about that, sort of being the first white fan who reached out to him.
And talking about over the years, what have been your highs? From a personal point of view, firstly from a personal point of view,
Yeah.
and then secondly from a game point of
A game
view.
point of view. Yeah, I'm. You know what? There's always more highs than lows. So yes, there's a problem now with the hearing, and it's not going to get better. We've been told that in no uncertain terms. So we deal with it, and we work our way around it, and we give thanks for another day of living. But the highs, from a personal perspective, undoubtedly, was when I made my radio debut in 2001. That was very, very special. That was a triangular series which featured Zimbabwe, the West Indies, and India. Zimbabwe's first ever triangular tournament, as we were building up for the 2003 World Cup. So that was really awesome. Then in 2003, I made my television debut at Queen Sports Club in Bulawayo. Zimbabwe beat the West Indies by 5 wickets. So those were two huge highs. But I mean, going to the inaugural World Cup in 2007 and being a part, that was the T20 World Cup in South Africa, and going there and being a part of that, I'll actually tell you a very funny story about that. So here we are at Newlands Stadium in Cape Town, and press conference with Brett Lee, who just got a hat-trick against Bangladesh. So now things are very professionally done there. There's a microphone that gets handed around, and you ask the questions, you know, so that's it's I'm sure you've experienced that as well.
Yes.
So I say, Brett, congratulations. You must love Newlands because in 2003 you got a hat-trick here at the same ground as well. So he said, well, thanks very much. Thank you, Dean, for your kind words. But no, the hat-trick that I got was actually at Durban. And of course, here we are at Newlands. So, I was very crestfallen, you know, because my head dropped, my shoulders dropped, looked like a fast bowler who's being hit around the ground. So Brett comes up to me afterwards and he says, listen, mate, you mustn't worry about that. It was very visible that you were disappointed with you getting the ground wrong. It's a bit like getting a wicket off a no ball. So don't worry about it, Dean. So now I'm smiling because he's saying Dean. And I'm thinking, now there's a bit of fame because Brett Lee knows my name. So I say,
Yes.
Brett, that's awesome, mate. Thank you for the encouragement. But how do you know my name? And he says, because your accreditation around your neck has it on it.
Oh, God.
So from hero to zero in absolutely no time.
But when you talk about the game, you've obviously experienced so much with the game,
Yes,
the
yeah.
matches, the everything, the highs. What stands out for you?
Well, Yvonne, so there are a lot of things. I mean, I probably the top of the list was I finished my schooling and because by nature by vocation I'm a telephonist, a switchboard operator. So I finished all of that in 1994, and it was February 95. So I was still very new back here, and you know, struggling to adapt. And we went to watch Zimbabwe in the test match, what turned out to be the fourth and final day of the test match. And it was when Zimbabwe won their first ever test match. You know, but you need to understand something very clearly. It's much more about Zimbabwe just winning a test match, because the history behind that test was that Henry Olonga was the first black player to represent Zimbabwe. And I cried out of pure joy and happiness when that happened, because we had to go that way. It had to happen. You couldn't just have a bunch of minority people who thought that they owned the game, running, well, not running it, but playing it. And so, yes, Zimbabwe winning that test match was just unbelievable. I mean, they didn't do a thing wrong. They scored 544 for 4 declared, but the way that they hunted those 20 wickets down, because Zimbabwe enforced the follow-on, was outstanding. I mean, Wasim Akram spoke to me and Amir Sahel, two players who were part of the Pakistani side, and they said, Dean, myself and Wasim can categorically tell you that that was the best fielding display we have seen by any team we have played against, and that includes the Australians, the South Africans, who were the best fielding sides in the world. But Amir Sahel and Wasim Akram said, for that sustained period that we played, we had not seen anything better in the field than Grant Flowers catches, and even old man Dave Houghton at the age of 39 taking unbelievably good catches. It was incredible. So another highlight for me was witnessing Hamilton Masakadza scoring his 100. I cried for that as well. I'm not afraid to admit that there were tears rolling down my cheeks when Hammy scored his 100 on debut. And again, the history, I think it meant more to me to see Hamilton Masakadza score 100 as opposed to, say, a 17-year-old Dean du Plessis, because more than likely Dean du Plessis would have had a bit more in terms of assistance, whereas Hamilton, I don't know what his background was. Maybe he did have a fair amount of assistance, but the point is, it's a boy from Highfield who came from very, very little and who scored 100 on his test debut. So that to me was very special. Tatenda Taibu taking over as captain, even though the circumstances were a little bit, he wasn't ready and he didn't really want the job, but he took it and he did a very good job with the facilities that he had to work with. And I was there when he took over as captain in the Sri Lanka series in 2004. But I mean, there were lots of Brian Vittori, for example, breaking a world record and getting 5 wickets in his first 2 one-day internationals against Bangladesh. That was very, very special. I suppose, also watching Heath Streak, scoring 130 odd against the West Indies and getting 9 wickets against Pakistan. That was outstanding, that's genuine all-roundership there. So there are many, many things, Yvonne, and going to Takashinga as well. I loved going to Takashinga when the West Indies were here in 2003 and interacting with the fans. And do you know, the very first person I interviewed in my life wasn't Andy Flower or Tatenda Taibu or Heath Streak. It was Mr. Brian Charles Lara
Wow.
on a Nokia 3310
Wow.
at Takashinga Sports Club in 2003. That was a highlight.
And now we talk about the women's game. You're currently in Pakistan, taking on Pakistan. And for us as ladies, these are things that we dreamed about. Have you ever taken a keen interest in the ladies as much as you do the men? Or
Yes. I mean, and I, it's interesting. I still feel that as much as the support has improved towards the women's game, I still feel that sometimes they get the short end of the stick. I really do. I know that they make a lot of mistakes when they're out there. So look here, you may not be the best bowling side and you may not be the best batting side. Zimbabwe's men's team have never, ever, throughout their history of cricket, they've never excelled as a bowling or a batting side. Their techniques generally, whether you're talking of 1992 or 2022, their techniques have never been particularly good, but they found a way. And same as we've only ever really had one bowler always who stands head and shoulders above the rest, and then the others just tag along, and they chip in here, there, and everywhere. But we've only ever, like Blessing Zarabani is consistently our best bowler, and before that, it would have been Heath Streak with individual performances here and there. But what they've always done, Zimbabwe, is their fielding has been exceptionally good. And so the one thing I'd like to try and encourage the women to do is to work on their fielding. Now, I'm not saying that they don't, but they need to work a bit more. So as much as technically they may be struggling with the bat, and as much as they may not necessarily have the firepower in the bowling, but you can always compete in the field. And we do see the girls drop quite a few catches. I don't know whether it's nerves or perhaps whether, I don't know whether whether we need to have a fielding coach who specifically works with the girls on fielding and nothing else. So getting to the ball, quick release, getting the ball into the keeper, making sure that their hands are in the correct position. So is it that position or that position when you take the ball? Because there's the reverse catching position and then there's a cup catching position. And I don't
Not
know.
the crocodile.
Yeah. and so I'm afraid there's no excuses for poor fielding.
Yes.
And
I feel like, for me personally, having watched the games, I think the best spell we had as a fielding unit was when Gary Brent was in charge. And
Yes.
that's why we came
That's correct.
4 runs close to going to the World Cup.
To the World Cup,
I
yeah.
remember going to UAE and even all the commentators were talking about the fielding and how they were just a unit. They were a pack. So maybe we still have hope we can get
That's
back
correct.
there.
Absolutely. But did you know that Gary Brent was arguably one of the world's best fielders when he played?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people don't know that, you see, because he was obviously in the side for his medium pace bowling, which nobody was very impressed with because it is gentle medium pace lollipop bowling. But Gary Brent was considered as one of the world's best fielders. But it's just that he went under the radar and nobody knew that because of the fact that he was there to bowl more than anything else.
And do you have favorites? Like, let's start from a Zimbabwean context. Do you have favorite players?
So Blessing is probably my favorite player at the moment. I just love talking to him, and I have so much respect for him because I interviewed him in 2018 and he didn't speak much. So he says, look, he feels that also his English has improved. I don't think that's got anything to do with it, respectfully. I think his confidence has gained.
The confidence, because Blessing was never one of those players that people thought would be, a superstar, that level.
Yes, yeah. So to me, it's got nothing to, and I say this respectfully, it's got nothing to do with whether his English has improved. The English was always there. It's the way that he now conducts himself, and it's the confidence that he now is able to speak a bit more freely. So I'm a very big fan of Blessing Muzarabani. I'm a big fan of Brian Bennett as well, though I still feel Brian Bennett has a lot of technical areas which needs correcting. He doesn't move his feet. And so when you have a bowler with pace and who I think is going to be found out if they start bouncing him. We saw what happened when Kwena Mapaka hit him on the helmet. And even in that innings of 137 against England at Trent Bridge last year, he batted effortlessly until Josh Tongue started to bounce him. Then he didn't know whether to hook or whether to get out of the way. And so at the end of the day, he just feathered the ball, just played a nothing shot and got out. So he's going to have to work on his technique against short ball bowling. And it's all good and wide to stand at the crease and throw your hands at balls outside the off stump, like Virendra Sehwag used to do for India. But you need to be able to move your feet. You need to get in line and outside the line when you're batting. My all-time favorite for Zimbabwe, though, is Dave Houghton. And a lot of people cannot understand it because if you look at the two records, obviously Andy Flower, we all know what he did for Zimbabwe. But Dave Houghton, he taught Andy Flower to play the reverse sweep. And he taught Andy Flower how to play spin. So perhaps maybe Andy perfected it and did it. I mean, at the end of the day, Alexander Graham Bell will always be the person who invented the telephone. Now we have the most amazing mobile phones, which obviously is way better than what Alexander Graham Bell did. But he is the one who invented the telephone. So Dave Houghton is the one who brought the reverse sweep into Zimbabwe cricket after learning it from Mushtaq Mohammed, who was a Pakistani batsman who was out here playing with the Pakistani railway side. Bruce Lee, my all-time favorite martial artist. He was, but people look at him now, but he died many years ago. So everybody thinks that the footage is obviously extremely old and grainy and scratchy. But at the end of the day, Bruce Lee is the grand master of martial arts.
And when we come back again to your personal life, I don't know if you want to get into there.
Of course, I have nothing.
How did you meet your wife?
Ah, yes, Chef Wheezy. So we went to a braai. One thing you'll know about me, if you read my WhatsApp status, it says no veg on my plate, no salad on my plate. Every day should be a braai day, proudly carnivore. Or if you listen to the Dean at Stumps podcast, what do I always say? Let's get into the meat and potatoes. So honestly, you will not have salad and vegetables on my plate. Anyway, we went to a braai, Goch Goch,
Mm.
and there I met Louise. And unfortunately, at the time, she had somebody else chasing her, much better looking guy. Because one thing, Yvonne, about me is that, and God makes us all differently. I was never blessed with good looks, and that's the truth. You can, I don't say it for
How do you know? Who told you?
many people.
Who was the first person who said, Dean,
My one
you are
cousin
not a
said,
Luca?
my one cousin used to say to me, my friend, the only lady who'll ever love you is your mother. Because so, and that's fine. I know I got big long ears and a big nose, and now I have a biggish tummy as well. My feathers are falling out. So, it's the way that it is. That's, some guys are blessed with extremely
But you
good
still
looks.
have hair. Some guys your age
No,
probably
you
are
see,
bald.
these are my feathers that are falling out on top. There's a nice big bald patch there, which is why I always have to wear a hat when I go out now. Anyway, so luckily that relationship with Louise and this other dude didn't last very long. And then she sent me a friend request on Facebook. And I said, I think I remember who this is. So you know what I did? Um, there was always a way back in the day with, I can't mention the bank, obviously, but you could send people airtime because it was before WhatsApp and data and things like that. So I sent her some airtime, knowing fully well that she would have received it. And then I said, "Good morning, Louise. This is Dean du Plessis. Um, our bank have just introduced something very new where I'm able to send airtime to you on your phone. And I was wondering whether you had received it." And she said, "I was wondering who sent me this airtime."
Yeah.
And and then we just started chatting, and yeah, then the rest is history. So,
But did you face any resistance from people? I mean, no offense, but obviously you can't hide the fact that, like you said, you take no offense to being called blind.
Yeah.
That people would be like, "You're dating a blind guy?"
No, no, no. That was never an issue for her at all. The one thing about Louise is that I'm very sensitive to things. She sees the brighter things in life. So sometimes she'll say to me, "Why do you always see the negative in a person?" And I say, "I don't see the negative. You must remember that I have senses that you guys don't have." And so I know almost immediately I can pick the aura of people very, very quickly. And she doesn't do that because she sees the good in not just people, but in everything. And so even if somebody did say to you, "You're dating a blind guy," she she would just have said, "So what?"
But Dean, what is it about, like, now that you mentioned the aura and everything,
Yeah.
like literally Dean, prime Dean, when a person spoke to you, you could even tell, like, is the person pretty? What is it about that gets you to be able to figure, I don't think this person is nice.
Yeah.
I don't think this person, I think this is a good
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. The only thing I can say to you, that is a God gift. It's a gift from God. Um, I'm not able. I can just hear in the timbre of the voice. I can hear if this person, like you can hear that this is a person who actually just genuinely isn't a very nice person, or you can hear that this is a person who is approachable, but if you get on the wrong side of them, you will understand that you're on the wrong side of them. And how do I do that? I can explain to you how I describe a cricket match, but I have no idea how I'm able to. But that sixth sense of mine has never let
Let
me
you
down,
down.
ever. And that's a gift. That's a protection mechanism from God.
What are your deepest regrets concerning your career?
I'm very sad that I left Zimbabwe. I should never have left Zimbabwe cricket. I used to work for Zimbabwe cricket from 2009 up until 2012. But then I was about to ask Louise to marry me. And I got an opportunity at a very big transport company to be a customer care manager and switchboard operator. And my salary quadrupled. And so I left Zimbabwe cricket because I desperately wanted to ensure that I'd be able to, um, you know, um, provide for my wife and make sure that she is all right. My dad, Chris du Plessis, said, "My boy, you're making the biggest mistake by leaving Zimbabwe cricket." So I said, "But Dad, I'm about to get married." And he said, "We'll find a way, but you've worked so hard to get to where you are now at Zimbabwe cricket. And now you're about to throw it all away just for the sake of a much better salary." And he was right. He was absolutely right. I was so very unhappy at Zimbabwe, at I can't name the company, at this transport company where I was. And I was very happy at Zimbabwe cricket. I guess the only thing about Zimbabwe cricket is I would have loved to have toured a bit more. I went to Bangladesh in 2009. Um, and then I never got the opportunity again after that. And I would have loved to have gone on a few more tours.
I guess, I mean, we make risks, we make decisions. Sometimes they pay off, sometimes they don't. And when you look at your career, what are you grateful for?
Oh, I'm grateful that I have a podcast. I'm grateful that 25 years later, people still want to know want to know my story. I'm grateful that I get to interview, or that I got to interview the likes of Kumar Sangakkara, Michael Holding, David Gower, Andy Flower. That's
Ooh,
yeah.
that's top of my list. Like a sit down and let me tell you my cricket bucket list. Andy would be top, but my favorite Andy is Andy Blignot. So he'd be
Yes,
second.
he's there as well. He's there.
He'd
I've
be
interviewed him as
second.
well. Yeah, I've interviewed him as well.
I feel like these, especially with Blignot, I think for me, it was in the era in which I really got deep into cricket was when he was playing. So obviously sometimes you're more inclined to people that you saw more.
Yes, absolutely.
Than the legends from before.
No, 100%. I can agree with you. I mean, Michael Holding, I interviewed him, but I never witnessed him play. I obviously just listened to him in the commentary box. But such a legend and such a gentleman and such a, I sent him a WhatsApp voice note and I said, "Mikey, my name is Dean du Plessis. I got your number from David Gower. Would it be okay, please, if I could interview you?" And he said, "Dean, the honor is all mine. I've heard so much about you through various people, and now I get to be on your podcast." I mean, how is it that, do you know what a huge honor that is?
Yeah.
So, and I'm grateful that I got to interview Brian Lara while he was still playing. You speak of Andy Blignot, I interviewed him, and he was extremely honest in his interview where he said to me that he remembers having a conversation with me when he was still playing and how he blamed everybody else around him for things not going his way. But if it perhaps maybe just been a bit more, because he was, by his own words, quite a lazy cricketer. Now, if you consider what he did as a lazy cricketer, a man who could run in and bowl at 150 k's an hour and score test runs.
Imagine what he could have done if he had a Cristiano Ronaldo mentality.
You know, Jason Gillespie, who I've also interviewed, former Australian fast bowler, he also coached the Rhinos. He said to me, "Dean, after the 2003 World Cup, we felt that Andy Blignot was the best all-rounder in the World Cup. But the thing is that he would not hold on to that status because he didn't apply himself." And I told I told Andy Blignot that. And Blignot said to me, "Dean, I know this." Ricky Ponting said, "You remember when Andy Blignot scored that 50 against Australia at Queen's in Bulawayo? And Andy got the man of the match. And at the presentation, Ricky Ponting said to him, 'Blidgy, you are the best all-rounder in the tournament, but you don't apply yourself. If you applied yourself, you would become a superstar.'" And he said Ricky Ponting told him that face to face.
So Dean, obviously on my podcast, I don't give questions to guests before the interview. So sometimes you might have certain things that you wanted to talk about that I might not have covered. Is there anything you feel like you need to talk about that I didn't ask about?
Oh gosh. I think what I'd like to say is that we need to be a little bit kinder to each other in the media industry. There's room for everybody in the business that you do. And I find that when there's somebody who potentially has a lot of talent and so on in their field, that the other journalists don't necessarily allow him or her into the circle. Um, and I can understand why. It's because, we're all after one thing. We're trying to get that special scoop, where a player maybe says X, Y, Z. And so we feel a bit deprived. I mean, often when I am moving around as journalists, when it comes to the crunch time, we'll be talking and having lots of fun together. But when it comes to actually interviewing somebody, then I find that I get left behind and nobody wants to take me to interview the player because of the fact that they want to ask the player questions and they're afraid that I may ask a question that they wanted to ask or vice versa. So I understand that, but please, guys, just be a bit more kinder. Social media in itself is an extremely brutal place out there. When you are being loved on social media, it's lovely. When you're being hated, it can mess with you emotionally and mentally. And another thing, Yvonne, that I want to tell you as well, and I have no shame in admitting this. People, you need to understand that depression is very, very real. I know that there are cultures that feel that depression is taboo and that you don't talk about it and that it doesn't exist. I will tell you something on your podcast, Yvonne Mangunda, that I very nearly wasn't here talking to you, not because that I couldn't make it, but because you would have been saying R.I.P. Dean du Plessis, because I came so very close to ending it all, because I just felt that I was a complete and utter waste of time. I've been in the business for 20-something years, and at the time I felt that I'd achieved absolutely nothing. I'm still a freelance journalist. I still don't earn any money from what I do. Why am I not earning money from what I do? Why am I not being contacted by broadcasters to say, we would like you to come and cover this series? Or why do Zimbabwe Cricket not say, hey, Mukomadin, travel with us, we're going to XYZ, So the reason is, I felt at the time, is because you're useless. You're not good at what you're doing. So why don't you rather step aside and end your life and go and join your mum and your dad and your brother, where you will not be a burden to anybody, and because you're clearly not doing something very right. And then I don't know what happened. Somebody, it must have been God, intervened and said, no way, you're not going to do this. So people understand me very clearly. Depression is real. Please, if somebody needs help, don't turn your back on them just because you don't suffer from depression. Extend a helping hand, because you may be the one responsible for ensuring that they are still with us for another year or 2 or 10 afterwards.
Thank you very much for those it's deep, deep and very insightful words from Dean about depression. And like you said, in some societies, it's not considered a disease or it's not considered a big deal, but people are depressed. And that's where you'll find people even committing suicide because they have nobody to talk to, nobody who understands. Dean, thank you very much for taking time to come to the studio and supporting the show and also coming and telling your story. I know over the years you have given your story a lot of times, but thank you for just taking this time and coming onto the show.
You're welcome. Thank you, Yvonne.
Until the next time, we'll bring you another big sporting personality, hoping that you got insight into Dean, a blind commentator who has found his space, who has found his path, but also along the way, he has faced obstacles. But at the end of the day, like he said, there's always God that will speak to you and take you out of that depressed state or whatever it is that you're going through. Until next time, goodbye.